Look, Admiral Brad Cooper is certainly in the mix, and he remains one of the top planners for the U.S. military. And when we think back to Operation Epic Fury, much of the bombing campaign that was conducted alongside Israeli forces was coordinated on an hourly basis behind the scene. U.S. Central Command actually has soldiers here in places like Tel Aviv and other locations in Israel to ensure that this coordination is taking place at the highest level. And I mention Israel because there is a possibility that Israeli jets are used if this broader strike package is approved by President Trump. What we're seeing right now is a display of deterrence by the United States. Last night, heavy strikes were ordered against Iran to show the Iranians that there is a cost and that they will pay a price if they try to attack U.S. forces or allies in the region. As it relates to this larger strike package, the president does have a variety of options, and he is likely to speak with top advisors this week to determine if there is an off-ramp here, if the Iranians are actually willing to make an agreement that can be adhered to. And the president talked about this yesterday in the Oval Office. They are dealing with two groups of people inside of Iran. One, the relatively more moderate voices. We're talking about Abbas Araghchi, the country's foreign minister, Mohammad Khalibaf, the country's parliament speaker. But it's the IRGC that is ordering these missile launches against U.S. forces in the region. And if they can't rein in the IRGC, there's really no point of a deal because it won't be agreed to.
Trey, there are two stories this morning I wanted to ask you about. One is cell phones. The military might surrender cell phones from our troops because they say the cell phone videos shared online can help Iran target American bases. And the other one is China. Reuters is reporting that Iran is set to receive 400 Chinese-made shoulder-fired air defense missile launchers, about $60–70 million purchase. President said he's very surprised if that were true. What do you know?
So the cell phone headline is not so surprising. It's a general OPSEC operational security issue in the region, and armies around the world will actually ensure that their soldiers are not providing targeting data to a regime like Iran. This story about China is incredibly significant, and the president was asked about this in the Oval Office yesterday, and he's been very clear that he sent a message in person to Chinese President Xi Jinping not to supply the Iranians with any sort of missiles or ammunition. The story that is today in Reuters is very important because it details the report. We're talking about a Chinese company that is reportedly going to provide Iran with at least 400 shoulder-fired missiles over land. And these are missiles, man-pads, that are used to shoot down helicopters and jets. The same type of missile that shot down that U.S. plane earlier this year over southwestern Iran. And it speaks to how dangerous these shoulder-supplied missiles can be because they're easily accessible and they're very easy to move on the ground. They just require one person to use. And if this takes place, and if these missiles are supplied to the Iranian regime, it is a direct threat to U.S. planes over the skies of Iran, and it could lead to the deaths of American soldiers.
Trey, let me ask you to go back to the IRGC for a second, because clearly General Ahmad Vahidi of the IRGC has not stopped striking U.S. bases in Jordan at Muwafaq and at Prince Sultan Air Base in Saudi Arabia because he's seeing the U.S. build up. So walk us forward through what we're likely to see today and the rest of the week. How do you not hit that with a greater intensity, assuming that there's no sign of the IRGC letting up, trying to stop a U.S. buildup?
Yeah, it's a great question. The Iranian plan here backfired in a way because they thought by attacking these countries in the Gulf like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, the UAE, that it would weaken a coalition between these countries. But what it's doing is creating an informal security cooperation. And we actually saw during this conflict some of these Gulf countries get more directly involved. And reports indicate they are considering further offensive action as they come under attack. What was very interesting earlier this week was the public announcement by Saudi Arabia that they actually participated alongside the United States in strikes against Iran-backed Iraqi Shia militias. The fact that they are now saying this publicly is a change in position by leadership in Saudi Arabia and an indication that they are certainly fed up with the Iranian regime and proxy forces threatening their energy infrastructure.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.